Size matters. I'm not saying bigger is better, but you definitely get more bush if you got a bigger trunk. And when it comes to the military, the single largest and heaviest piece of equipment is an aircraft carrier. Size is one of the determining factors in how seriously we take an aircraft carrier. And even though technically the US Navy only has 11 aircraft carriers, there are another 9 aircraft-carrying ships in the US Navy. It's just that they go by a different name. They are called amphibious assault ships, and as you can tell by the name, they are very different from the traditional supercarriers. But why the United States has 2 different types of aircraft carriers, why those carriers are used by separate branches of the military, the reason they rarely work together, and why doubling the size of a ship doesn't double its volume, is not what you think. Take a look at these 2 carriers side by side. At a glance, one is obviously bigger than the other, but the question is, how much bigger and what difference does that make? On average, American supercarriers are 1,092 feet long, while amphibious assault ships are typically around 850 feet long. That difference may not seem that significant when measuring flight decks, but it says a lot about the intended function of each ship. For example, the amphibious assault ships use their decks more like a landing pad than a runway, which means only aircraft capable of vertical takeoff and landing, such as the F-35B, AV-8B Harrier, V-22 Osprey and other helicopters can operate on these vessels. It is for this reason that the official designation of these ships is LHD, or LHA, which stand for Landing Helicopter Dock or Landing Helicopter Assault. When the aviation wing of these ships performs a mission, it is to provide short-term support to smaller landing craft and ground forces nearby, since helicopters and Harriers do not have the range to maintain constant airspace dominance. This is a direct contrast to how the USA Navy uses its supercarriers. Nimitz or Ford-class carrier is more like a floating airport than a ship. That extra length of deck space allows supercarriers to launch heavier fixed-wing aircraft like the F-18 Hornet and E-2 Hawkeye, in addition to the aircraft launched by amphibious assault ships. These heavier airplanes serve important missions related to maintaining air dominance, performing reconnaissance and electronic warfare in contested airspaces, as well as providing continuous support to ground forces, which further reinforces the long-term nature of supercarrier missions. But it's not just what on the surface of these ships that matters. You see, the length of a ship directly impacts its most important physical property, volume. The sheer difference in volume between supercarriers and LHDs is so great that it impacts every aspect of their mission. Take for example the fact that the larger a ship is, the more easily it moves through the water. This may seem counterintuitive, but it's due to something known as the square-cube law. Basically, when increasing the dimensions of an object, its volume always increases much faster than its surface area. This is why doubling the size of a ship does not double its volume. It increases it 8-fold. When ships are scaled up in size, their volume, which determines their displacement or buoyancy, increases faster than their surface, area, which determines the resistance or friction experienced in the water. This is why, even though the difference in ship length between the supercarriers and LHD is only 340 feet, the overall difference in volume makes the supercarriers far more efficient. At moving through water as it experiences less surface friction proportional to its volume. This results in greater fuel and energy efficiency for larger ships, but it also means that the amount of aviation fuel and supplies that the ships can carry would increase exponentially. This significantly extends the mission duration for a carrier and its air wing, before the need for underway replenishment. Take into consideration that all of the bombs, missiles, and other weapons carried by combat aircraft are stored in magazines, deep within a carrier's hull for protection. With the difference in volume, the supercarrier can carry about 375,000 cubic feet of ordnance, while amphibious assault ships are much stora cubic feet. This means a supercarrier can perform up to 2 weeks of continuous operations at full capacity without need to muhatons rostock, while an amphibious assault ship would deplete its fighting capability in only 1 week with just 6 aircraft. That said, an amphibious ready group, which is